What is going on, everyone? This is Eric coming at you from just outside of Hartford, Connecticut. And today, we're going to be looking at week one of the NFL season. This is going to be the first video of this type where we're going to discuss the NFL season in full, week by week. And as you can tell, I have a bottom half blocked out. That's the standings. We'll get to that momentarily. It doesn't necessarily apply all that much to week one, but later down on the season, obviously, it's going to be important. But as you can see also, I have the games in order of how they were played. So the top left game is going to be the Thursday night game, continuing left to right, top row, middle, second row, third row. You know, the further along you get, the further along the game was played. So without further ado, we'll jump in here. And our opening game, Thursday Night Football, was the Houston Texans at the Kansas City Chiefs. And this was a pretty good game despite the fact that Kansas City outscored them 34-20. It wasn't bad. Kansas City's the defending Super Bowl champions, and they looked pretty good. So, obviously, Mahomes looked very good, and he was connecting with a lot of his receivers. Sammy Watkins got involved. Tyreek Hill was okay, but, it was a pretty good quarterback duel, especially considering the fact that this was Houston's first game without DeAndre Hopkins since he was drafted in 2013. So, all in all, pretty good game for both sides. The quarterbacks looked good. Everyone was having fun. Kansas City got to hoist their Super Bowl banner for the first time in 50 years. So, pretty impressive for them. Then we get to the Sunday games, and we'll start with Philadelphia versus Washington. As an Eagles fan, not a pretty game. First half, they looked really good to start out. They were clicking on offense and defense, forced a lot of 3-and-outs, but then Washington just started to rally, and they got to Carson Wentz 8 times for 8 sacks. Granted, that's what happens when you have a backup offensive line unit out, essentially. But still not acceptable. Chase Young, he drew a couple dumb penalties that he shouldn't have, but at the same time, he looked pretty good, and the Washington pass rush looked pretty good. The offense wasn't necessarily dominant as you'd hope if you're a Washington fan, but the future's looking good. So then we get the Seattle versus Atlanta game. And this was a good game as well for the quarterbacks, at least stat-wise. They both had pretty good numbers, but Russell Wilson outdueled Matt Ryan, and it wasn't that pretty all said and done. Seattle wins 38-25, and if you're a Atlanta fan, that 25 probably triggers you a little bit, 28-3, but Seattle looked pretty good. Defensively, there are some parts missing in Seattle, but offensively, that team is clicking. We get to the New York Jets versus Buffalo Bills, and Buffalo started off this game red hot. They were looking really good. The Jets were not looking so good. I know at one point when I saw the stats, Darnold was like 1 for 3 for 0 yards, and it was in the second quarter, I'm pretty sure at that point. Josh Allen looked pretty good for Buffalo, but slowly Buffalo began to kind of give up the lead, but they hung on. The Jets obviously need some help with the running game at this point in time. They did lose, their star Le'Veon Bell. He's just placed on the IR with a hamstring injury. Obviously, IR this year is only going to be 3 weeks minimum, so jury's out on that one. Then we get back to here, and we got the Chicago Bears-Detroit Lions game. And Detroit was leading for the majority of this game, but Trubisky turned it on in the fourth quarter, rallying the Bears to a victory on the road in Detroit. Now, Detroit definitely needs to start throwing the ball a little better. I mean, they need to establish a run game as well. That's the big problem with Detroit. You can throw all you want, but if you just throw, teams are going to figure you out. So, pretty impressive win by Chicago. Pretty disappointing loss by Detroit. Right now, there are definitely some hot seats heating up, and Matt Patricia for Detroit is definitely one of the warmer seats. Dan Quinn for Atlanta, Adam Gase for the Jets. These 3 seats are really hot right now. Even Bill O'Brien for Houston. I don't think Doug Peterson's got a warm seat in Philadelphia. But then we get to Green Bay, Minnesota, and this was expected to be a little bit more of a defensive battle, especially for Minnesota. Minnesota's got a good defense. But Aaron Rodgers had so much to prove this year, especially because they picked a quarterback in the first round, obviously, in Jordan Love. So he came in with a vengeance, and he tore up Minnesota's young, inexperienced secondary. Remember, they got rid of Trey Waynes, Xavier Rhodes, I should say. So Green Bay was ready. Green Bay actually scored the highest point total in this week. Yeah, in week 1, 43 points was the highest point total in the NFL. And Minnesota didn't have a bad offensive performance either, but they couldn't catch up. The defense let them down. Minnesota's supposed to be a defensive-minded team similar to Atlanta, but it didn't work out for either teams. Like, of course, Zimmer is also a defensive-minded coach, just like Dan Quinn is. Alas, sometimes it doesn't work, especially when you're playing one of the best quarterbacks in the history of the league in Aaron Rodgers, who has something to prove. Davante Adams went off. Then we get Miami, New England, and New England, if you look at the box score, New England squeaked out a 10-point victory, 21-11. But reality is, it was a better game than that for New England. So Cam Newton looks like he's a great fit in the Belichick system. So he rushed for 2 touchdowns, which is something that Brady never did. Brady could never run. Even when he was young, he couldn't run. In Miami, obviously, Fitzpatrick started. But the real question for Miami is, when is Tua going to go out there? The sooner Tua goes out, the happier Dolphins fans will be, but at the same time, they're going to be collectively holding their breath since he's a year removed from that devastating injury in Alabama. What was that, the end of 2018? So about 2 years at this point. But it's always concerning to see that. But still, New England looked pretty good. At this point in time, they might be saying Brady who, but I don't think they will be. Then we get the Las Vegas Raiders versus the Carolina Panthers, and it felt so weird right in Las Vegas. I've never done that in a video like this, but Vegas was definitely carried by Josh Jacobs, second-year running back, rushed for 3 touchdowns. He had himself a night, and you could tell that Luke Kuechly's sudden retirement for Carolina is going to hurt them in the run game. They don't have a good replacement for him yet, so Carolina's going to get run over a bit this year. They don't have a great pass or a great defense when it comes to run stopping. The offense, though, looked pretty good in Carolina. Now we get to Indianapolis versus Jacksonville, and this was one of the bigger upsets of the week. Jacksonville was predicted by many to have one of the worst seasons in the league. People were saying 2-14. They let go of a lot of their stars, specifically on the defense. But they did pretty good, and part of that's going to be Phillip Rivers is on a new team with a lack of summer reps and no preseason. But Jacksonville did pretty good. Gardner Minshew carried that team, took him on his back, and led another comeback. We'll see what happens with Minshew, but Minshew might be the answer for Jacksonville. And then we get Baltimore versus Cleveland, and Baltimore slaughtered Cleveland, not even close. Lamar Jackson looked elite again. You know, he didn't look like his MVP self from last year, but again, no preseason. Cleveland just looked lost, confused, done, and it's a shame. But at the same time, with all the talking that Cleveland Brown fans have been doing for the past year, we don't necessarily care. Baltimore, well-deserved win. Again, Baltimore is at this point in time, I think Baltimore's winning the Super Bowl. We get the LA Chargers playing the Cincinnati Bengals, and this was Joe Burrow's first professional game. Burrow did run for a touchdown. I think it was like an 18 or 20-yard touchdown, something like that, and that was definitely the highlight for him. He did show some good chemistry with some guys, including A.J. Green, which is always key. You want him to have a good season. Obviously, A.J. Green's your franchise receiver. Burrow's your franchise quarterback. And Cincinnati had some moments, but the Chargers were just too much for him. Chargers offensively didn't look that good. Tyrod Taylor did not look that good. He didn't do much. And I think if the Chargers were playing a better team, they would have lost this game. But because they're playing Burrow in his first game, they beat him. Now we get to Tampa Bay versus New Orleans. And this one was obviously the battle of 2 of the greatest quarterbacks on the field at this point in time, in Tom Brady and Drew Brees. Many would say those are the 1 and 2 quarterbacks in arguably NFL history. And now they're division rivals, so we get to see that matchup at least 2 times a year for at least 2 years. And Brady looked done. Brady threw 2 interceptions and 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. But with all the weapons and all the hype that was going into it, people were all bragging about how great Brady is. He's going to have the best season ever. He's going to have a better season than his 2007 season where they went 16-0 in the preseason. It didn't look like that. And again, part of that could definitely be a lack of a preseason. But fact of the matter is, if Tom Brady's truly the greatest of all time, he should have no problem with that. It's not like he was, destroyed by drop passes, and it's not like the Saints defense is the best in the league. Now, the Saints offense looked pretty good, and this is despite the fact that they lost Michael Thomas. He did not suffer a high ankle sprain, but he very well might miss a game or two, which is going to be devastating to the Saints offense. Now, Kamara just signed an extension, so he's at least happy, but still, Saints, this is a pressing year for the Saints. Then we get to the Arizona Cardinals playing the San Francisco 49ers, and this was another little bit of an upset where Arizona pulled the upset over San Fran on the road, but Kyler Murray looked very good. DeAndre Hopkins had great chemistry with Kyler. A little surprising with the lack of a preseason, but San Francisco, I think this just shows you that Jimmy Garoppolo is not truly the answer because Arizona is not that strong of a defense. But we'll see with them. Obviously, Super Bowl losers over the past, there's like an insane record. I think since the turn of the century, if you make the Super Bowl and lose, it's a pretty bad record. Like, I think one, maybe two teams have gone from losing the Super Bowl one year to winning it the next, or even making it the next. Obviously, the most recent is going to be the 2018-19 Patriots, who went on to win the Super Bowl after losing the year prior. Then we get Dallas versus the LA Rams. First game in the new stadium in LA, and it was definitely a good game. I'm not here to discuss the fact that the Rams got yet another aided call, pass interference call by the refs in a marquee game. I'm not here to discuss the fact that the Cowboys got screwed yet again on offense by a bad penalty call. This time it was offensive pass interference. Back in 2014-15, it was the Dez dropped it situation against Green Bay. But, of course, I don't necessarily want the Cowboys to win, so I'm always happy to see them lose. Still, not like that. You don't want to see a garbage call ruin a game. And now we're to the two Monday night games, and we have Pittsburgh playing the New York Giants in New York, or New Jersey if you prefer. And Saquon Barkley was the big storyline. He did not look that good on the ground. Now, he did have, I think it was 6 catches for 60 yards or something like that. But running, he looked done. He looked defeated. He can't pass protect. Tiki Barber actually recently said that Saquon is a great back, but he's not going to be he can't be in every down back because he can't pass protect. And he's looking like a liability in pass protection. And Saquon, he needs to figure out how to start blocking, because if he can't do pass protection, they're going to have to start pulling him on third downs. And they don't want to do that. Not for a guy you dropped a first-round pick on. Especially not a top, pretty sure he went second overall. So that's a red flag right there. But Pittsburgh, Ben Roethlisberger looked very good in his return from an injury. Because remember, 2019, he only appeared in 1.5 games. So we'll see with Pittsburgh. Juju Smith-Schuster finally had a good game. And then we get to the last game here, Tennessee versus Denver. And this game was kind of ugly. So Stephen Gostkowski actually missed 3 field goals and an extra point. He ends up kicking the game-winning field goal, but fact of the matter is, he missed 4 of his 6 kicks. You can't do that and expect to win games. So Gostkowski, he's a multiple-time Super Bowl champion. He needs to figure out what he's doing, because there's plenty of decent kickers on the waiver wire, and I know that Matt Gay is on a practice squad. Matt Gay is definitely looking pretty good right now. If you're Tennessee, you might have to take him and hope that you can promote him quickly. I think he's on the Colts practice squad right now, Matt Gay. But Denver had its moments on offense, but they had 3 or 4 fumbles on offense. They only lost 1 of them. But fact of the matter is, you can't win games doing that. I know there was a lot of talk about Melvin Gordon struggling to adapt to the high altitude of Denver. He just did. There was that one drive there where you're on the goal line and you tried to get it 4 times in a row. And I believe your the running defense for Tennessee stopped you 3 out of those 4 times, because I know Locke threw it, I think, on second down. You can't do that. You have to figure out what you're doing, especially with the fact that you have, many would say you have one of the best running back cores in the league. Melvin Gordon just did not look good. So that's the week recap. Now, how did the standings look? So obviously, I'll start this with the Easts. And Buffalo, New England sit in first place in the NFC East at 1-0, while Miami and New York Jets are 0-1. NFC East not looking that strong. Washington sits in sole possession of first place at 1-0, while Dallas, New York, and Philadelphia, all three teams were considered to be, playoff contenders. New York, less than the other two, are sitting at 0-1. AFC North, Baltimore and Pittsburgh are sitting at 1-0, while Cincy and Cleveland are 0-1. Poor Ohio fans. That's all I'm going to say. NFC North, Green Bay and Chicago sit in first at 1-0. Detroit and Minnesota are in second at 0-1. AFC South, Jacksonville and Tennessee sit at 1-0 in first place. Houston and Indianapolis sit in 0-1 in second place. In NFC South, New Orleans is the only team that won their game, going 1-0, while Carolina, Atlanta, and Tampa Bay went 0-1. AFC West, Kansas City, Las Vegas, and the LA Chargers all won their games, while Denver was the sole loser in this division. While the NFC West saw Arizona, Seattle, and the LA Rams go 1-0, and San Francisco as the sole loser. Now, I should have mentioned this. How did I organize these records? Well, if you lost a division game, i.e. Philadelphia, Tampa Bay, you drop. And then I went by points other than that. So let's just say you got outscored by 10 and your opponent got outscored, your division rival got outscored by 6. Your division rival's higher than you at this point in time. Later on, it'll be better. But that is the Week 1 recap of the NFL season. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Have a great rest of your day.